What are the ingredients there of intensity in communication?
Well, I think eye contact is crucial. You know, a classic scenario is one of the spouses is reading a newspaper at breakfast. The other spouse starts talking about something, and the person reading the paper, even if they continue the conversation, but the paper is up here, the other individual gets a little put out because the other person doesn't feel listened to. Get off of your cell phone, put it down. If you're at your computer, stop typing. It shows that you value the other person.
Tony Alessandra, good to see you again, sir.
Likewise, James.
So, first question. Why is communication an indispensable life skill?
Well, everything is about how people are talking to each other, trying to, me conveying what I want to convey to you, you understanding what I am delivering to you. And oftentimes in between there, things get lost. It could be static. It could be interruptions. It could be you interpreting what I'm saying differently than what I meant. So it's crucial. Anything you want to get done, whether it's sales, leadership, parenting, teaching, it's all done via communication.
Oh, it is. I mean, you've gone there two things, haven't you? Convey and understand. You've got to convey something, communicate it. And there's two things to be understand. Yeah, I mean, what does Stephen Covey says? They need to feel understood.
Right. Early in my career, one of the topics that I focused on was listening skills and the broader category of communication. So it was questioning, listening, and feedback, which all are part of this whole communication aspect. So, there's a difference between listening and hearing. Hearing, I may hear what you're saying, but I may not be truly listening. We called it active listening. Active listening is me showing you that I'm listening. It's giving you feedback. It's clarifying things that you're saying. So this is all part of the communication process.
Yeah, I'm really observing a lot of things you're doing. I'm just acutely aware of your body language, of what's going on at the moment. You know what? There's a guy called Martin Newman, Dr. Martin Newman. He said something really profound that I've remembered since the day he said it. This was about 6-7 years ago. It was about he's a professor on emotional intelligence. And he said, listening is the biggest skill in the world at reducing resistance in any area of your life.
Absolutely. Especially in marriage, by the way. Especially in marriage, yes.
It is. And why especially in marriage?
Well, I don't know if you remember this book that came out many years ago, Men Are From Mars,
Women
Are From Venus.
Everyone remembers.
Yeah, so
everyone's heard of the book.
Yeah, so the whole thing is, men speak in Martian, women speak in Venetian, and when men speak, the female needs to understand Martian, so to speak. I mean, I'm using their terminology, but particularly, women naturally tend to be better listeners than men. Don't ask me why. It just is the case. Women are, maybe it's their emotional intelligence. Maybe they have a more natural feel for emotional intelligence in general. Okay. Believe me, there are some men who have much more emotional intelligence than some women, but in general, women tend to be better listeners than men. And so it's important that, listening is a very active process. I need to be listening to you. I need to be showing you that I'm listening. So eye contact is absolutely crucial.
Do you listen with your eyes?
You do. You absolutely should listen with your eyes. You have to listen with your eyes and your ears. So, because when people communicate, they are basically communicating using 3 V's of communication: verbal, vocal, visual. So verbal and vocal. So verbal, the words. Vocal, the way they're said, which really can change how you hear things. So listen to this. So let me use vocal here. You ready?
Yep.
So the saying is, I didn't say you took that. I didn't say you took that. Okay. Now watch with inflection. I didn't say you took that. Somebody else did. I didn't say you took that. I implied it. I didn't say you took that. Somebody else did. I didn't say you took that, you borrowed it. I didn't say you took that, took something else. See, the intonation.
Right, seriously, I mean, I was
It's
trying to
crazy,
keep up
isn't
with,
it?
I was trying to keep up with you there, and it was like everyone is different. Yeah.
So, you put the emphasis on a word. Even what's the word I used to use? I can't even remember the word I used to. I used to do this whole thing using a word and how the inflection, just one word, how the inflection changes it.
Well, whenever it comes to you during the course of this, this podcast,
I'll do
just
it.
Go for it, yeah. Verbal, vocal, and visual.
So, but visual is where you use your eyes.
Yeah.
Okay, because you say to me, Tony, we've been talking about this particular item. Are you in agreement with me? And, I can say, yes, I am. Or I can go like this.
You've told me everything I need to hear.
And then I say, yeah. So notice, my body language probably was no. My vocal inflection was maybe, yeah. But the words, yeah, the actual words, the verbal was yes. So that's why it's so important to pay attention, not just to what is said, but how it's said and the body language that goes with it.
I feel a lot of pressure right now to saying the right thing in the right way with the right body language.
So,
all right, so here's another aspect of listening. Do you listen with your heart?
With your heart? I guess you could, and maybe there's where part of emotional intelligence comes into play.
The Chinese have got an interesting philosophy around listening. They've got, you listen with your eyes, you listen with your ears, you listen with your heart. So holistic listening. But they go a step further is you listen and like there's only one person. These are the most important person. So you paying undivided attention, and then they go even further again. You imagine you're listening to the king or the queen.
Yeah.
And that's how present you've got to be.
Yeah. And is that where the heart comes in?
Well, no, I think the heart is more. You listen with your eyes, visual. You listen with your ears, auditory. You listen with your heart, the feelings, how someone's feeling as they're saying it. Kind of active listening goes into that area, doesn't it, of emotional intelligence?
Yeah. Yep.
What is emotional intelligence?
Well, it's how you can actually read the other person, sort of sense where they're coming from. You know how to deal with that individual. We can go a lot broader than that, but
reading the individual, you have to look at them, don't you?
You do.
You can't read them unless you do.
Again, the verbal, vocal, visual, the eyes really play a very important aspect to
how does
listening.
Someone become world class in those three areas: verbal, vocal, visual, in the way that they communicate?
Well, training, learning. So, you can hear the words. The words themselves are probably the easiest of the three. The vocal, you really have to pay attention to the vocal and be more aware of what it means and sense it. Okay, sense it. And then the visual is a whole other world. It's body language, and there's books. I mean, tons of books written on body language. What does it mean when somebody goes like this? What does it mean when somebody goes like
finger here? Apparently,
they're thinking.
I'm thinking. I'm making a decision here. Yeah.
So there's a lot of little nuances. I'm Italian, so we have our body language. Yeah. We won't get into the Italian body language, what that means. But
does that mean you're really stylish though? Because come on, Italians are really stylish.
Italians talk with their hands. So it's interesting. There was a little YouTube clip I saw of a young little girl. She must have been 2 or 3 years old. It is the funniest thing how she is using her hands. It's almost exaggerated, but, how would she know what's exaggerated or not? But, she's talking with her hands. But Italians, that's what they do.
It does. I mean, it conveys a message. It adds an intensity to what's being said.
Exactly.
Are there any other secrets to intensity in communication? Because when you are in an intense conversation, you're definitely present, yeah? What are the ingredients there of intensity in communication?
Well, I think eye contact is crucial. That's why when you don't have eye contact with somebody and they're talking to you, they feel you are not listening to them. Even if you can repeat it back, what they said, they just feel slighted that you didn't have eye contact. That's why it's so important. Now listen to this. It's so important. Every so often, somebody walks into a room and there's a person in the room, let's say it's a husband and wife, or it could be two business people. And the person who's already in the room is doing something. They're concentrating. Person walks in the room and starts talking. And the person who's doing something, concentrating, eventually realizes somebody's in the room saying something and says, what did you say? And the other person who walked in the room gets a little put out that, hey, why aren't you listening to me?
By the way, that's really common in life.
It's very common. I think it's very important that when somebody walks into somebody else's space, they need to get the other person's attention before they deliver whatever message it is. If they don't get the person's attention, then it's their fault, not the person's fault, for not hearing or listening to what they said. And that's why I want to get if I walk into a room, I want to get somebody's eye contact first before I deliver my message.
Get the other person's attention before you ask them the question or demand something.
Exactly.
Remember your first comment on marriages earlier on, and how important is that on day-to-day life with your family and your friends and your loved ones, of getting their attention before you go and ask them the question?
Well, I think it's crucial. I think it's maybe a little easier to get your spouse's attention, a little bit harder to get a child's attention.
Yeah.
Because they're just preoccupied with other things or just not aware.
If you don't get their attention and you keep asking the question, is that where frustration creeps in? And
yes.
People start shouting.
Absolutely. A classic scenario is one of the spouses, I won't say husband or wife, just one of the spouses, is reading a newspaper at breakfast. And the other spouse starts talking about something. Maybe they're doing something, whatever. And the person reading the paper, even if they continue the conversation the correct way, but the paper is up here, the other individual gets a little put out because they just don't feel that.
They don't feel listened to.
That's exactly right. That's the word. They don't feel listened to. Even though the person heard, the other person doesn't feel listened to.
I interviewed a lady, Dr. Linda Shaw, a remarkable lady, psychotherapist. And she said, you want to know the best thing that you can give anyone? The best thing you can give anyone is to help them make them feel significant. Mm. Oh, God, there's an art to that, isn't there?
But how do you make them feel significant? You listen to them.
You put the paper down.
Put the paper down. Put whatever it is.
Stop. You uncross your arms.
Yeah. Get off of your cell phone. Oh. Put it down. If you're at your computer, stop typing. In a particular
Basically,
office,
you
stop what you're doing. You even turn around. So I'm at my desk. Yeah. Somebody comes in, and says, "Hey, you got a minute?" Too often, the person keeps doing, "Yeah, I have a minute. What is it you want?"
Yeah.
No, I stop. I turn around, and it shows respect. It shows that you value the other person. I stop what I'm doing, whether it's typing, reading, whatever, and now I'm giving you my full attention. And in listening, also try to block out distractions.
There's an art to eliminating noise, yeah?
Well, there is, and it's called concentration. All right, so you're in a restaurant. You're talking to somebody across from you, so just two of you. But the table over here, two people you don't even know, are having a more interesting conversation. So you're trying to listen with one ear here and one ear there. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. People feel that they can This is even like studying. I feel I could listen to music and study or read at the same time. Or I can multitask. I can do two things at the same time. You really, you could only do one thing at a time well. So when you are trying to do two things, you are moving your attention back and forth. And as I move my attention here, I'm missing something there. When I move my attention there, I'm missing something here. So it really is important that you stop what you're doing, make your eye contact, let the person know you're listening. So eye contact, things like this, we call them vocal prompts. Yeah. Really?
Minimally encourage.
Go on.
Keep them speaking.
And then also feedback. Can you give me an example of that? You said you want it right away. What do you mean by right away? Is it today or because some people right away means now. Some people right away means as soon as you can get to it. So it's important that you clarify anything that can be misunderstood. So that's why we have questions, listening, feedback. Feedback is making sure that what I'm hearing and how I'm interpreting it is what you're really trying to convey to me. That's communication.
When you said, well, I had this little moment. There's a lady called Carol Dweck that she wrote a book called Mindset. She talks about the growth mindset. And I always use her story of a little girl coming up to her and saying, I can't do that. And she said, you just got to add one word to the end of the sentence and just repeat it again for me. Just put the word yet.
Yet. I was thinking now, but it's the same thing.
I can't do that yet.
Yet.
Which is so, it just makes the point straight away. It changes your mindset. And as soon as you said, you can't do two things. You can't listen to this things. And that well.
That's right.
And if you're not doing it well, probably by definition, you're doing it average or poor.
That's exactly.
So do you want to be an average listener? Do you want to be a poor listener? It's a bit of a manipulation question. The answer is probably no for most people. Then if you want to do it well, undivided attention. Learn how to concentrate. How do you learn how to concentrate when you're in conversation?
Well, so, one of the things that I talk about quite frequently is DISC, the four-style model.
I want to go there.
We're going to go there, but I'm going to tell you. So DISC, for those listeners, the D is dominance. It stands for dominance. The I for influence. The S for steadiness. The C for conscientiousness. I'm a D, a high D. So dominance. And listening is not one of my strengths. So how did I get better at listening? I learned what it takes to be a better listener and then had to practice it. Now, is it even now, after I've learned how to do it, hopefully well, is it natural to me? No, it's not. I have to, even though I know all the things that should be done, I've studied it, I've taught it. It's still not natural to my D style. I know how to do it. I've just got to make sure that when somebody's talking to me, I know that I have to stop what I'm doing. I know I have to turn around and make my eye contact. I know how to give the verbal and vocal, prompts and, tell me more. How did that happen? Using the appropriate facial expressions. But it's all something that I had to learn. And anybody out there who is not a good listener could learn how to be a good listener. And that is one of the best ways. Talk about emotional intelligence and talk about making somebody feel valued. It's listening. I mean, that is, if I had to pick the crucial communication skill, that's what it would be. It would be listening, not speech. Listening.
And look, you've given a few sort of tips there, really, haven't you? Number one is literally stop what you're doing. Do a physical act as well. Turn and face. Put the paper down, stop typing. Give that time, show the person that you're giving time, but then you're saying learn how to do it and practice it.
Exactly. But even when you practice it, you'll know what to do, but it doesn't mean that it becomes natural for you.
Will it ever become natural?
Well, I wouldn't say that listening for me, as much as I have studied it and even taught it. They say the best way to learn something is to try to teach it. It's still not a natural, habitual behavior for me. I still have to.
And you're not offended by that neither. You're not disgraced by it. I mean, you're communicating that now. A lot of people might not want to admit that. Is that common?
Well, I think it's common. They don't want to admit a lot of things. Right. So listening being one of them, but being a good communicator, having emotional intelligence, whatever it is. A lot of people don't admit that they have that inability.
You said you've taught and studied this. Now, I'm very acutely aware that you've been at the top of your game for 50 years, communicating, not just DISC, but behaviors, communication, and teaching and educating people for 50 years. What have been some of the biggest lessons that you've had in them 50 years?
Well, I'm going to run the gamut here. The one thing that I talk about a lot is something I call the platinum rule, which is different from the golden rule. The golden rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In other words, treat people the way you would like to be treated, which is all well and good if other people are just like you and other people are moved and motivated exactly the same way you are. But they're not. Most people are not. And in a world of increasing diversity, where people are so different, well, it could be ethnic, social, behavioral, gender, religious, ethnic, you name it. There's a lot of areas of difference, diversity. You have to be able to adapt. And that's where I came up with the platinum rule, which is do unto others as they would have you do unto them. Basically, treat people the way they want and need to be treated. So you need to learn people listen differently, people communicate differently. That's how you connect with them. You find out what's important to them, you listen and adapt, adjust. There's you may be too young for this. There was an old TV show called All in the Family. And All in the Family, there was Archie Bunker. Maybe you've heard that name, Archie Bunker. Go on. Archie Bunker was, oh my gosh, he was, it's my way or the highway. All right. And he used to say to his wife, Edith.
High D.
He was, I don't even know if I can call him a high D. He was off the charts. That's all I can tell you. If you ever get a chance to go to YouTube, put either Archie Bunker or All in the Family and just watch a couple of clips. It was quite groundbreaking in terms of what was said and done on the show. But anyway, he would always get into these little arguments with his wife, Edith. And he would say, Edith, you know why we don't communicate? It's because I speak in English and you listen in dingbat. He used to call her a dingbat. But if Archie really wanted to learn how to communicate more effectively with Edith, what would he have learned to speak? Dingbat. That's the way you get on somebody else's wavelength. So, I have 4 kids. I have a D, an I, an S, and a C. I have all 4 styles.
Give over.
It's been perfect. That's my learning laboratory. All the little things about how to manage them, motivate them, correct them, very different from one style to another.
We've got to go through all of that. How to manage, motivate, and correct. Can we do that? Manage, motivate, and correct for each of the styles.
Well, I'll do my best, yes. So, with D's, again, remember.
Let's just remember for the listeners, a D is someone that's directly speaking, that's dominant in behavioral and communication style.
Exactly. They are what we would call fast-paced and task-oriented. All right, fast-paced, task-oriented. You don't go in and say that, build up this whole case before you get to the point. They want you to get to the point, and if they want you to fill in any gaps, then that's when they'll start asking questions. But with my, so when it comes to managing each of those styles, the D's, they're self-managed. You don't have to manage a D. You just have to make sure that you both are on the same wavelength, what direction they're going in. Okay? You just have to make sure that's the direction. Are we in agreement? And they're there. You don't have to worry about that. They're self-motivated. Boom, they're there. Whereas an S is going to need a little bit more hand-holding. Here, let's walk that way. The C, they're going to want, why am I walking that way? All the data and documentation. And the I, we just have to get them excited about why to go that way. When it comes to learning, they learn very differently. The D says, let's take a new computer program, or let's say somebody is switching from.
Yeah, and just for the listeners right now, every time we say the D, let's just remind them this is task focused, fast-paced.
Fast-paced task focused for a D. For an I, it's fast-paced relationship focused. For the S, it's slow-paced relationship focused. And for the C, it's slow-paced task focus.
Right.
So you can see how they all have their little differences. Yeah. So when it comes to learning, let's say I've been told, you know what, we're moving away from a PC to a Mac computer. Very different, right? You have to learn new things. Here's how a D does it. The D says, all right, look, James, just show me how to turn it on and do this one thing. If I want to know anything else, I'll call you. You can tell me what to do, right? They don't want to learn the whole thing.
Yeah, I know.
All right. So that's the D. The C says, where's the manual for this? I want to go through the manual and make sure I know what to do. The S says, James, can you show me how to do this? So they learn by, you have to explain it, show it, let them do it, give them feedback, and then move on to the next thing. And the I, they just, they look at this and say, hey, what's this button? What does this do? What does this do? They just jump right in and maybe even press the wrong button and erase everything on the computer. Who knows? But it's really very different. Yeah. Correcting with the S. Now, let's go to my kids. The S, who is relationship-oriented, slow pace. If the S did something wrong, which doesn't happen very often, all I had to do is give my look like this. And you can see the tears welling up in the S's eyes, my child.
Because they feel guilty. Or
they feel guilty. They don't like to be reprimanded. Yeah. With the C, you just have to... You really don't want to tell a C they did something wrong. You want to show them how it should have been done, could it be done better a different way. Not that you're wrong. Here's a better way to do it. With the I, if you're going to correct them, they don't like their feelings hurt either, the I's. The S's definitely don't. But the I's... They don't want to, you don't want to correct them in front of other people, all right? They don't like to lose face. But, you have to tell them what they did wrong and, how they should do it. With the D, you can just get right to the point. No, that's not the way to do it. This is what you should be doing or have to be doing. Very direct. They don't get upset about things. You can just straightforward with them. It really is different how these kids or the different styles react. When they brought home their report cards, the I wanted to call up grandma, put it on the fridge, with a magnet so everybody could see it. The D would come home with the report card. You'd have to ask, did you get your report card today? Yeah. Where is it? Here. This is great. The D would say, how great? They want a little payment for it, How much do I get for every A, every B? Whereas the I just wants recognition, let everybody see how well I did. So it's this.
What does the C want?
The C, let's say when they brought their report card home, they would show you the report card and tell you why they scored only a B here or a C there, or why they got the A here. Yeah. They go into this analysis of everything. And the S, they when they show the report card and you ask, well, why did you get a C? Well, that's when the tears start welling up again and the teacher didn't understand me and, whatever. So a lot of hand-holding there.
What are some of the biggest mistakes then that people are making? Even with DISC here, what are the biggest mistakes that people are making in business and personal life on a day-to-day basis?
I would say one would be not adjusting to the style of the other person.
Not adapting.
That's basically learning how to adjust. And there's a couple of simple ways to adjust. You don't have to learn all this incredible stuff. So when you're dealing with a D, just make sure that whatever you do, you're doing it faster and you are focusing on the key points,
Yep.
the task, okay? With the I's, you want to, again, move fast, but make it, a bit more upbeat, exciting.
Yeah.
With the S's, slow down, build trust and rapport, listen to them of all four styles. We were talking about listening.
Do you speak quieter as well?
You do. You do.
So with a D, you could go louder and faster, and tonality
definitely.
and the pace and expression is a lot higher.
So let's see if this will work. So when I'm speaking to a D, all right, James, here's what I want you to do, or here's what needs to be done to make this happen. All right. With an I, hey, James, here's what this is really exciting where we're going down this. Yeah. With the S, James, here's what we should be doing to accomplish this. And with a C, James, here are the 4 steps that we need to take to accomplish this. Here is some of the key points that you need to be aware of as you're, just your voice changes, your body language, with the I, you could be more effusive, with your hands and body language. The D, the D could be forceful. James, this, whereas the C, just almost robotic.
What? Right. So you're a high D, yeah?
I'm a high D, yes.
Which one do you find the most challenging to adapt to?
Usually it's what we call the diagonals. So if you could visualize a square, and let's draw a line down the middle and a line across the middle. So we have 4 equal squares, all right? So in the upper right, we have the D. In the lower right, we have the I. In the lower left, we have the S. And in the upper left, we have the C. So D, I, S, C.
Yeah.
And it's the diagonals that are most difficult because they are different in what we call pace and priority. Pace being fast or slow. So the D and the S. So the D is fast-paced. The S is slower paced. So that's one issue. And when it comes to priority, the D, task, the S, relationship. So there's 2 differences. At least the D and the I, they're both fast-paced. It's just a difference between task and relationship. With the C and the S, they're both slower paced, but it's task versus relationship. It's the diagonal. So the D and the S, the C and the I, because the I is fast-paced.
Yeah, they've got two differences. Two differences versus one difference.
Exactly. So you just need to learn to make those adaptations.
Do you ever stop developing it? Are you ever there? You just know how to communicate with people now. You just know how to adapt.
I think that after a while, it becomes habitual behavior. You know what to do with an S. You know what to do with an I, etc. I know that when I'm with an S, what I need to do, and it really does come. It comes natural.
I found the S one because I've been practicing using your stuff for years, and I found the S one easier than the C.
Yeah. Oh, well, yes.
Slow it down, softer, warmer tone. And the C, to add a level of detail in, and I've just got to prepare a lot more for that one.
Yeah, but you're an I, aren't
Yeah.
you? Yeah. So, but here's the thing: that's a diagonal, an
Yeah, it
I
is.
and a C. You know, with the S, you just need to change your pace.
Yeah.
Whereas with the C, you have to change both your pace and your priority. See, for me, the easiest people, well, the two adjacent styles, the D and the C, the D and the I. So I only have to make one change. With the S, I've got to make two. So it becomes a bit more problematic.
But that's empowering though, isn't it? Because I've only got to make two changes. But you've got to make two changes.
So you got to make two changes, and then you learn what are those changes. I mean, I find it difficult. It's difficult for me to slow down. I'm a fast-paced person, not only because I'm a D. I'm a New Yorker. I'm Italian. You know, so I got three things working on this here. I got the D, the Italian, the New York City. So it's harder for me to, to slow down. But I've learned to slow down. I've lived in San Diego, Southern California for 47 years. And a New York City fast-paced, bottom line does not work there.
Is that stereotype or is that literally true? Are most people in New York City that dominant, fast-paced person?
Have you been to New York City?
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, so are most people, I would just say that when you look at certain areas, let's say geography, there is a...
is there any pockets of like high S's?
Well, I don't know if there's pockets. There's certainly a lot of high S's, C's.
I went to
I's.
Maui actually, and that's pretty chilled out.
They're chilled. They're chilled.
It's the opposite of New York. No one's on the street after 9 o'clock at night.
Right. Yeah. But when I moved to San Diego, that was a big change for me because they were slower paced. Not everything had to be a rush, and were they more relationship oriented? I'm not sure they were. It might appear that they are. They seem to be friendlier.
Right.
New Yorkers appear to be unfriendly, but I'll tell you something. You stop a New Yorker on the street and say, I'm lost. How do I? A true New Yorker will stop what they're doing. They will take the time and tell you not where to go, but how to go.
Right.
Yeah, they'll easily tell you where to go, but
but they'll do it.
They'll do it. They'll do it. They are pretty good at that.
So what's the link then with behavior and communication? Because you do a lot on behavior change, a lot on behavior awareness. What's the link between the two?
Well, part of your behavior is communication. In fact, a lot of your behavior is communication.
Is DISC a behavior profile, a personality profile, or a communication profile?
Yeah, it's a behavioral profile. Some people call it communication profile. It is not a personality profile. And a lot of people call it a personality profile. Yeah. But personality is a lot deeper, a lot broader than just DISC or the 4 behaviors.
See, what I like about DISC is the simplicity.
It is. You can get into other style concepts like MBTI, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. That's what MBTI stands for, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. They have 16.
Yeah.
Not just 16 styles, but each style has 4 letters. And you need to remember all this. Whereas with DISC, you're either a D, I, S, or C. It's easy. One of our good customers has gone beyond DISC, takes the DISC concept, but says, you know what? It's hard to, what really is a D and an I? So what he did is he used birds. So the D is an eagle. And of course, when you see an eagle, you have a sense of what an eagle's like. Fly high, they're to do their own thing. And for the I, it's a parrot. You have an image. So when you see the I, instead of just saying, "Oh, I'm an I," I'm a parrot. There's a lot more that you can relate to it. And then the S is a dove, and the C is an owl.
There you go. Why is the C an owl?
Just the the concept of what an owl is, not necessarily that
Precise,
accurate thinking,
yeah,
who, right?
Poised, waiting. Yeah.
Just.
I'm seeing it. I'm seeing the head moving. Yeah. So coming back to DISC and learning it, you learn it through your children. Now, there's some big people that you've actually taught this to. So Tony Robbins comes to you. He's been coming to you for years. I want to say decades, but I don't know if it is decades.
Well, for years. But I mean, okay, so let me clarify. He doesn't really come to me, but when he does DISC for all of the people all over the world, he uses our DISC.
Right.
So he's one that a lot of people may know. And he does a lot of DISC assessments every month, a lot, tens of thousands.
What impact do you think that has on, because he does a lot on communication there with people. So what impact does that have on his community and the way it's growing and developing?
He obviously sees it as crucial, very important, because when people take the DISC assessment, he has coaches, a whole team of coaches, I don't know how many, dozens, hundreds, who then can sit down and debrief people about what their report is and how to use it.
Why is that debrief so crucial?
Well, it tells people, you see, a lot of people, when they get any kind of report, any kind of behavioral report, whether it's DISC, emotional intelligence, you name it, what they typically do, and let me just use DISC as an example, is they will look at the report, they'll read through, I don't know if they read every word, but they look through the report, and they usually say, yeah, this is me or this is not me. With our DISC, almost invariably people say, this is me. I can't believe I just answered 24 questions and they know this much about me. But it can get a lot deeper in terms of understanding yourself and how you come across to other people. And secondarily, how you can use it in the way you communicate with other people. And that's what the coaches do.
See, I found that, you get that awareness, don't you? You get that real lesson. And the people that I've worked with that have done that, it's a really motivational experience, actually. Oh, look, this is me. People are really into looking at that. So they become really aware of the good bits, the blind spots, the not so good bits. And they get into personal development. I think it's a really brilliant way of getting into personal development. MBTI was the first one I came across, actually, probably 20 years ago. I went through that, and that had a similar effect on me personally.
Very similar, yes.
It sort of becoming really aware of who you are and what your strengths are, what you're not so good at, how you need to start developing yourself.
But James, when you have somebody like a coach, and this is where coaches come into play, so crucial. When you have a coach who knows how to debrief one of these kinds of reports, let's again talk about DISC. It could be MBTI, it could be whatever. They give you a depth and breadth of insight that you alone reading it would not get. And that's why, whether it's a Tony Robbins coach, whether it's an action coach, whether, it doesn't matter what kind of coach you are.
Grant Cardone is now using your DISC as well.
Grant Cardone uses it. Grant Cardone used to be my next door neighbor.
Really?
In La Jolla, California. Literally next door neighbor. Here was my house, next house over. This was
What
Grant.
was it like being Grant Cardone's next door neighbor?
Well,
I've got all of these thoughts that's going through my head right now.
Yeah, well, this was back in 1999.
And you were Heidi, and he's Heidi.
Exactly. No,
Did you have an argument over whose fence was...
No. We never had an argument. Back then, he was mostly a automotive sales trainer.
Right.
And but also invested a lot in real estate back then, and he still does even today. Big, investments in real estate. Really, really good at that. I mean, we weren't buddy, but we communicated with each other. I literally can, from my second floor patio, our outdoor patio, can look down and see into his first floor patio. We used to joke about that. Hey, Grant, how you doing? So it was interesting to have him as a neighbor. We moved away from there. And I guess maybe a year or two later, he sold his home and moved. Now he lives in Miami, as does Tony Robbins. They both lived in San Diego, but they moved to Florida.
Right.
And I could just assume, I didn't ask them why they moved to Florida, but probably taxes. There's a big high income tax.
Right.
State income tax in California. There is zero state income tax in Florida. Yeah. So and when you're making the kind of money they're making, which is multi-millions of dollars, you're talking about a lot of money, because just to California, that we have a federal tax that you pay wherever you live. But in California, at their income levels, it was over 13%. So you figure for every $1 million they earned, they had to give California $130,000 and whatever to the government, which was another almost 40%. So, but yeah, Grant Cardone uses our DISC assessment, Tony Robbins, Brian Tracy. So we have those kinds of people.
Eat That Frog, Brian Tracy. That's a blast from the... You're good friends with Brian, aren't you?
Very good friends with Brian. We see him probably, my wife and I see Brian and Barbara Tracy for dinner maybe every 3-4 months.
His book, Eat That Frog, had a profound effect on sort of both discipline and sort of time management to a degree on people, didn't it? Where did he think of that phrase, eat that frog?
Well, it's Brian Tracy. He's written, let's see, what did he tell me last time? He's almost at 100 books that he's written. He writes
the Psychology of Selling, and The Art of Closing the Sale, ridiculously brilliant books.
Yeah.
So he's done 100 books.
Almost. He's going to get to 100 books. He does 4 books a year, and they're all over the place. It can be even political,
right?
Or positive thinking. But Eat That Frog is, I think, his best-selling book. His Psychology of Selling was an audio program with Nightingale Conant, and was the second best-selling audio program. The best-selling was The Psychology of Winning, I think it was, right, by Dennis Waitley.
Right. Baseball. Dennis Waitley?
No, not baseball. No, he was a big motivational speaker, right, but different than Brian. A lot of us have slowed down. As you get older, you slow down. In fact, last year, I have these conversations with my buddies where I said, you know what, I want to go out on top. I'm going to retire from speaking. And they would say, that's crazy. You should, why not continue speaking if you're still good at it? I said, no, I want to go out on top. I don't want to speak so long that my skills are not as good as they were when I was younger, and people start saying, yeah, he used to be really good. Used to be. So last year, I did a speech for ActionCOACH in Las Vegas, and I actually was pretty sick. 90 minutes, 500 plus people. They called it BizX.
Yeah.
At the end of the speech, I got a standing ovation. And I said, you know what? I'm talking to myself. I said, this is my mic drop. I haven't given a speech since. That was April of 2022. So it's been actually almost 18 months. I haven't given another speech, and I won't. I'm done. Because I want people to be saying, why are you quitting? You're at the top of your game. That's when I want to quit.
Yeah.
So
choose the moment. Let's go back to where we started. We talked about communication. A big thing that you talked about communication was on listening.
Absolutely.
But let's talk about the act of me communicating. Saying the right thing in the right way, verbal, vocal, visual, all these kind of things. But I want to come at it from an angle of pressure and stress, because some people do feel pressure when it comes down to having to communicate. Now, do the different DISC profiles have different needs under pressure?
Well, I would say probably the DISC of all four styles, and I'm just in general, we're talking about generalities here. I would say probably the C style may have the most difficulty. The S style.
Why? Because they want to get it right.
They want to get it right. They don't really want to be at the center of attention. Right. But when they do speak, they know what they're saying, but they don't say a lot. But when they know it, when they feel sure, they could almost appear to be a D. But again, they don't talk as much. The S, again, doesn't like to be the center of attention, likes to be in the background, likes to be a supporter as opposed to the one out front. Mm-hmm. Whereas the I always wants to be out front. Even if they don't know what they're talking about, they want to be out front. And the D, it really doesn't matter. I as a D, I can talk or not talk. When I talk with authority, and I'm using the general I. And everything sounds authoritative, forceful. Boy, Dean really knows what they're talking about, even if they don't. So I would say, again, back to your question about stress and pressure, I would say that the biggest stress and pressure would be on a C and S when it comes to communicating, but the C most, because they're not as people-oriented. The S is people-oriented.
Do they have to do different things to cope with the pressure?
I think the C would rather not talk at all. They would rather just be in the background and walk away. The S, if it's one-on-one, they're fine. One-on-many, no, that's not their thing. Whereas the I, one-on-one, one-on-many, it doesn't matter. They like to be the storyteller, the center of attention. The D, if there's something in it for me, I'll do it. If not, you can do it.
So give them an incentive.
Yeah.
Motivate them. Yeah. So they've got different motivators then as well.
Oh, yeah. Again, it depends. The D is very money motivated, very money achievement motivated. Sometimes they'll do things even if there's no money, if it just is achievement. I've done it.
Is that driven you throughout your career?
What's driven me is certainly money. There's no question about it, simply because growing up, we didn't have any.
Right.
Growing up, I grew up and lived initially in the projects of New York City. Now, the projects, I don't know if you know what that means, but the projects are the low-cost, high-rise buildings, mm-hmm. almost like public, low-cost rent, but small apartments. My father was a New York City cab driver. He also worked in the printing industry, but in shipping. We didn't have much money. When I went away to college, my parents said, look, we only have enough money for the first year and we'll figure something out, all of us. And it wasn't until the summer between my freshman and sophomore year that I got a job selling door to door and realized that I really was good at selling and made a lot of money that summer between my freshman and sophomore year in college, enough money that I was able to pay my tuition, my room, my board, my travel, my spending money. My parents didn't have to lay out a penny. And I did that again between my sophomore and junior year, my junior and senior year. And even when I went away to grad school, et cetera, earned all my own money selling various things, whether it was life insurance, whether it was pots and pans.
Did you sell pots and pans?
I had sold pots and pans. And here's an interesting little tidbit that you may or may not know. So I was selling pots and pans in the summers of 66, 67, 68. The product was called Salad Master. They were a set of 10-piece set of cookware, 6 pots, 4 lids, surgical stainless steel on the outside, copper inside. It was almost like a sandwich, surgical stainless steel. We called it surgical. I don't know what that, stainless steel, copper in the middle for conductivity. So I was selling that cookware door to door. At the same time, in Texas, now I was in New Jersey doing this. In Texas, selling Salad Master cookware, Zig Ziglar, before he was
Really?
the Zig Ziglar you saw on stage. He was a salesperson selling the same cookware I was selling.
Are you friends with Zig Ziglar as well?
Yeah, he's passed away now, but
We were
yes,
friends with
definitely. I was on tour with him in Australia. We went to 5 different cities, and we had a nice bond. Yeah, very nice bond. In that tour,
What did
by
you
the way,
learn from Zig?
well, I'll tell you what he told me. I said to him, hey, Zig, can you come in? Because we all spoke at different times during the day in each city. And I said, would you listen to one of my speeches and give me some feedback? So the next day, after he listened to me, he gave me some advice. He said I was going to be really, really big in the field of speaking, that I had a lot of great stories, great humor. But the one thing that was lacking is you have to pull the emotion in people where it almost would bring tears to their eyes. And I have to tell you, I never mastered that. Never. I tried. For whatever reason, I couldn't master it. But had a very successful speaking career, doing my stories and humor, along with content.
Did Zig Ziglar get that every time he spoke?
I think Zig had a formula. I don't know if I got the numbers right, but every 4 minutes there had to be something.
Really?
Could have been 5 minutes, could have been 8 minutes.
Something emotional.
Either emotional or funny, but something to break that up. Different speakers had different ways of doing things. Bill Gove.
Who's the best speaker you've ever seen?
The best speaker. I could tell you the best speech I've ever heard.
Oh.
Okay, was Al Pacino in a movie called what was it called? I think it may have been City Hall, where he was a mayor, and whatever it was, a young black kid was killed, and he had to go speak at a black church, and the black community was really against the mayor, him. And so he got up, he was introduced, he got up, not a single clap. So he started talking. And as he started talking, you can see his emotion come out, his voice starting to change. He moved from behind the podium, and little by little, the audience, not audience, it wasn't an audience, but the people in the church, it was at a church, would start, saying, yeah, amen, a couple of claps, and at the end they were cheering, and it was such an incredible speech.
I'm going to go watch it.
It's like not even a 5-minute speech.
What's the movie again?
I think it's called City Hall with Al Pacino. And you have to fast forward until you get to where he's going into this black church. You have to listen to this. But other than that, if you really want to get into honest to goodness speakers who earn money for a living, Zig was incredible. I mean, really, really good. I loved a guy named Bill Gove who used to do what's called vignettes. So he had a lot of, a vignette would be a point with a story built around it, to make it stick. So he had all these little enclosed vignettes. So let's just say he had 50 of them. So depending on the audience, depending on what they wanted him to cover, depending on how long he had to talk, all he would have to do is go into his vignettes and say, okay, I'm going to do this one, these two, and this one. And that'll be within the time period that will accomplish what it is they want to hear.
So it's a story wrapped around it.
Great story. Yeah, really, really good. He was really good. I mean, I loved Cavett Robert. He was a real Southern, almost like a preacher. So people like that, Martin Luther King, some of his speeches. I thought a great speech was John F. Kennedy in his inauguration, the one where he says, ask not what you can do or what the country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I mean, just some great things. I growing up, even as a kid in school, I was a storyteller. It was just natural to me where I would tell these stories about things that happened to me. I come from an Italian family. My mother was any speaker of my friends, any speaker who met my mother in person had a story about her because she was like that. She was one of a kind. And, I have stories about my mother. So, I would tell these stories, things that happened to me in college. People would come around, as I told my stories, more and more people would come around. I didn't realize I would be a speaker, in college. It was just, entertaining people. And I remember in 1973, early 73, I took an assessment. I'd never taken an assessment before. And this assessment, I believe, was called a strong vocational test. And it was a whole series of questions. And the report told you what you would be best at. So I got the report back, and I only did this because it was free. I was a professor. And one of my students showed me his and said, you can take it for free. I'm going to do it. So I took it. I got it back. I looked at number 3 on the list. Number 3 said, and this told what you would really be good at. Marketing and merchandising. Absolutely, that's me. Number 2, sales. This thing's incredible. Number 1, I looked at, and I said, this is absolutely ridiculous. It's so wrong. I cannot believe it. It got 2 and 3 right, but number 1, forget about it. It was, just... where did this come from? So I took that and I filed it away. This was 1973. In the early 90s. Now this is...
You hadn't told us what it was yet.
No. But now I was a college prof, a university prof, through 1978. So from...
in what area?
Marketing, sales, advertising, So from September of 1970 through December of 78. In January of 79, I left academia, became a professional speaker, and that's when my first book came out called Non-Manipulative Selling. That was my very first book. And so my speaking career, that was January of 79. In July of 85. So we're talking about what, 6.5 years later, I was inducted into the Professional Speakers Hall of Fame. Okay. So that was 85. Early 90s. Very successful in speaking, making a lot of money. I decide, scanners were coming out, and scanners where you can do a whole bunch of pages at one time, and you can scan and take a paper and make it digital, put it into a PDF and file it on the computer. And I had all these file cabinets of papers, and I said, all right, I'm going to take all the paper out of my life and put it all on my computer. And so little by little, as I was doing other things, take that file folder out, do it. So I took out this one file folder, and in there was the test. And I looked at it and I said, I cannot believe this, how accurate this was. Now, remember back in 73, I said, this is ridiculous. So number 3, marketing and merchandising. Number 2, salesperson. Number 1, public speaker. But back in 73, it wasn't in my frame of reference. I didn't even know what a public speaker was. I didn't know there were public speakers. I knew people spoke in public. I didn't know they earned money doing that. I didn't know until 79 when I became one. And this assessment, I'm sure that it
Is that
had
why you
some
got into assessments?
That probably was one of the things that in my mind, it had such an impact on me that drew me. I mean, I got into assessments prior to that. I went to, while I was in my doctoral program in sort of the end of 1974, I was invited to this person's house, and he was introducing a new product. And the product was social style sales strategies. It was a Larry Wilson Learning product. And I looked at this and I said, my God, this is it. This is what it was almost, the whole thing about love at first sight. I looked at this and I said, this is what I want to do. And it was 4 styles, but the terminology was expressive, amiable, analytical, and driver. So the driver was the D. The amiable was the S. The expressive was the I. And the analytical was the C.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that terminology in 74. But I looked at this. I said, this is what I want to do. I love it. So I went back to my doctoral dissertation chairman, because you have to write this dissertation, which had been, the proposal for my dissertation was approved. And it was buyer-seller similarity. There was more to it. But the similarity I was looking at was demographic, age, weight, height, gender, etc. So I go back to my chairman and I said, you know what? I want to change my dissertation, and I want to do it instead of demographics, I want to do it on psychographics, personality, behavior. Okay. And he said, absolutely not. No way. He said, you got your proposal accepted. He said, that's a tough thing to do. Just finish it. Get out of here. And if you want to focus on this other stuff, then do it then. But get your PhD, because 50% of all people who get to that phase, the dissertation phase, never finish it. They call it ABD, all but dissertation. And many of them regret it, that they never really finished that last final step. By the way, that person, that doctoral chairman of mine, he was a professional speaker also, did about 100 speeches a year, mostly for Amway. He had a multi-million bestseller book called The Magic of Thinking Big, which was a book I read as a teenager and had a big impact on me. That's one of the reasons I went to that university, because I knew he was there. And I called before I even decided to go there and got him on the phone and said, look, I'm thinking going here. Would you be my dissertation chairman? He said, yes. And I went there. Dr. David Schwartz, the author of The Magic of Thinking Big. I go back, you asked me something and I only gave you one answer. And that was some of those philosophies of my life. And I said the platinum rule, do unto others as they would have you do unto them. But there are other philosophies that really had to this day, I live by. This too shall pass. Whenever anything...
Whose philosophy is that?
I don't know who it is,
Buddhism.
But I love it. I love it. Yeah, it could be. But whenever anything goes wrong, stress, whatever, I just say to myself, this too shall pass. And it always does, but I don't let it get me down.
Yeah.
This too shall pass. Another one, which I really practice, what goes around comes around. And the whole concept of karma. And I try to be good to people. When I was growing up, this is something you probably don't know about me. When I was growing up, I got in a lot of street fights, fist fights, and was quite good at it. And one of the reasons I got into so many fights.
Quite good at it, yeah.
I was.
Be a UFC champion now.
Well, it didn't exist back then, but I bet you I would have tried it if they had it at that time.
Yeah.
The reason I got into so many fights is I always stuck up for the underdog. If I saw somebody being picked on, I would try to stop it. And if that led to a fight, so be it. So, that whole thing about what goes around comes around, I feel, and a lot of people who know me think that I have uncanny luck. But I think it's karma. I think somebody asked me more than once on podcasts, what would you like to be known for? And I said, well, I think what a lot of people would say and what I believe is generosity. I tend to be generous in financially, okay, but also helping people beyond just finances. And that, growing up, it was fighting for the underdog. And I think that karma has come back. So what goes around comes around. This too shall pass. But one of the things that I think led to a lot of my success in life was a statement from my mother. And my mother would say to me, Anthony, never called me Tony, Anthony, you need to go the extra inch. So, I mean, when people hear that, and I'm glad you said that, mile, because that's really what the statement is, going the extra mile. My mother said, you go the extra inch. And she would say, a mile's too far. She said, and going the extra inch, I want you to improve yourself just a tiny bit each and every day in every area of life. So socially, give one more compliment each day. Physically, do one more push-up, sit-up, whatever. Mentally, learn a new word, read an extra page in the book. Physically, walk around the block one more time, or push-up, sit-up. Spiritually, whatever. Read one page of the Bible or whatever. But it was always going the extra inch. And what it did, from the time I was a little kid, it instilled in me this, I don't know if it was a need or probably a desire of self-improvement. So I read all these self-improvement books. One of those books was The Magic of Thinking Big, which really had a very big impact on me. Another was Psycho-Cybernetics. I don't know if you ever read that book by Maxwell Maltz. Really, really powerful book about how habits are formed, etc. And it goes way beyond that. But Psycho-Cybernetics is the mechanics of the mind. It really is psychology. Yeah. This guy had a multi-million best-selling book, and he was a plastic surgeon. And what he realized is that when people had all these insecurities or whatever, and thinking it was their nose, their face, whatever, and he would fix them, they still had these insecurities. So he realized, wait a second, it's not on the outside, it's on the inside. If I could only do plastic surgery inside on the mind, and that's where that book, Psycho-Cybernetics, came about. But my mother, go the extra inch. Even to this day, at my age, with what I've achieved in life, it has been drilled so deep inside of my psyche, I am always trying to do better, always trying to improve, always trying to go the extra inch.
Al Pacino says that in one of his speeches on Any Given Sunday, I think. In an American football movie. He says about all of the inches that we all put in.
Yeah, well, maybe that's where my mother... Well, no, my mother got before that. And maybe he knew my mother. They're both Italian.
Yeah.
Both from New York.
You mentioned Al Pacino, so I thought I'd mention it there.
Yeah.
Really powerful. I've got... By the way, did your professor ever tell you that you can do the new one? The psychology one?
No, I couldn't. No, he said I couldn't do it in my dissertation.
End of.
No, just do what you said you were going to do with demographics.
Is that what you did?
I did. I finished it. But when I got out, that's when I started really writing and speaking about the 4 styles. And so I started with 4 different names, all right? Expressive, amiable, analytical. Then I changed it to thinker, relator, socializer, and director.
Yeah.
And again, that was in the early 80s, maybe even the late 70s. It probably was in the late 70s. And then sometime in the 80s, now I had been aware of DISC, but I liked what I was doing, and what I liked how I did the visual aspect, the quadrants, etc. And sometime in the 80s, the the president of the disc company, at that time there was only one, heard me speak using my terminology, not theirs. And he said, you know, I like what you did. I like the visual way you show the 4 styles. They weren't doing it in disc at the time. And he said, I'd like you to write a book with my VP of Research and Development on disc, but using a lot of what you have, you know, in terms of the visualization. Because back then, I don't think disc had the quadrants or any. Right. So we wrote this book. Tens of thousands of copies were given out to consultants over a number of years. And of course, then, you know, once I got into it with this VP of R&D at DISC, the company, it was at the time called Carlson Learning. The original DISC company was called Performex. Performex was bought by Carlson Learning. Carlson Learning was bought by Intermetrics. Intermetrics was bought by Wiley Publishing. Everything has changed. But when it was Carlson, still in the early days, is when I did this book, and I realized that DISC was so much more well-known and popular worldwide than what I was doing. And I decided to move in that direction.
And you've piggybacked off that success, because now you're considered the world's best in that area.
Yeah, it's been a great experience going that direction.
Well, I've got some quick fire questions for you.
Okay.
What's your favorite book you've ever read?
Oh my gosh. I would say favorite book, probably Psycho-Cybernetics.
Yep. What's your favorite movie?
Funny Girl, believe it or not, with Barbara Streisand. Right. I love the movie because her performance was truly Oscar performance. Her voice, in my opinion, she has the best voice certainly of any female singer. And of course, there's other really great female singers. Linda Ronstadt, Celine Dion, but boy, her voice was great. The movie was incredible. It was funny. It was touching. It was emotional. Yeah, so that was the movie, Funny Girl.
And your favorite holiday destination? New
York City.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. No, I love New York City.
How often do you go there?
Well, I haven't been there in a few years because, things have changed.
We went to watch the New York Knicks, and it was brilliant.
Madison Square Garden? Yeah, no.
It was brilliant.
Yeah, but New York City is where I was born and raised, in the city, and I know the city. It's in me.
Yeah.
Even though I've lived in California 47 years, I'm a New Yorker. It's still in me. I know the city well. I know the layout of the city. I love to go to the theater. I love the restaurants. I love just the ambiance of the city. Yeah. New York City.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Superpower. Boy, there's a lot of good ones. It could be strength. It could be Superman's the vision. What is it called? Where you can see through things.
Yeah.
Okay, one superpower. I got it. It is knowing what's going to happen tomorrow.
Seeing the future.
Seeing the future, yeah, because then I can buy some good stocks.
Yeah, you can. Your money's early bird or night owl?
Oh, definitely early bird. Definitely. I get up at between 4 and 5 a.m.
You and Vic Chiafatelli.
Yes.
He gets up like 2 a.m.
Oh, that's too. And Angie Fairbanks gets up. I mean, she only sleeps 3 hours a night. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
Her whole life, she only sleeps about 3 hours every night.
There you go.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but I'm an early bird.
Vic he gets up at 2.
Yeah, well, they talk to each other then.
Yeah. There you go. If you could have one day in someone else's life, who would you choose?
Oh, boy. One day in another person's life, I would think... Boy, there's so many to choose from. Well, I could say Jesus one day, but if you want somebody more current, Probably a sports person. I don't know how much you know about American baseball.
Go on.
Maybe Sandy Koufax, who was a pitcher, arguably the best left-handed pitcher ever.
Is there a particular day that you would have chosen of his?
Yeah, the day he pitched a perfect game, because I listened to it while I was a kid.
That's a good story, that.
Yeah.
The day he pitched the perfect game. That's the day I'd
pitched a
have him.
perfect game. And I remember I was in my grandmother's house. I was listening to it on radio. And his first 9 pitches, all right, so you only get 3 strikes and you're out. You get 3 outs to end the inning. He pitched 9 pitches. Nobody even hit a foul ball. 9 strikes. And I said to myself, this is going to be good. And it turned out to be a perfect game.
There you go. All right. So who have been the 3 biggest trusted advisors in your life? And bear it in mind, I mean, you're the world's best in what you do. Who's helped you?
Oh, there's been a lot of people. But I would say Dr. David Schwartz was significant. And the guy who introduced me to the 4 styles back in 1974, believe it or not, his name was Bill Schwartz. They spelled their Schwartz name different. Bill Gove, the speaker I told you had the vignettes, because one day in 1981, now this was 2.5 years after I had entered full-time speaking, he came up to me and he said, Tony, you're doing it all wrong. You're speaking as if you were a professor, and that's not you. You're funny, you're mischievous, you're New York Italian, and you don't let any of that come out on stage. You need to let it come out on stage. And as soon as I started doing that, my career went like this. If I had stayed where I was, it may have still gone up, but, just slow. Once I made that change, it was...
What, of being yourself?
Being more. I mean, have you seen me speak?
Yeah.
So more Italian, more New York, more playful, funny. But initially, I wasn't doing that as a speaker.
I've only seen you do that.
Yeah. Well, that was.
There you go. All right. So if there's one thing the listeners should do, having listened to this, what do you think the first thing is?
Well, you just said it. Listen. Learn how to listen better, because I will tell you that if you can become a better listener, you will get more people to like you. You will be more effective as a communicator. You will be more persuasive if that's what you want to be. There's a lot of power in listening. The power of listening.
Beautiful. I actually think they should all go and do the DISC profile as well.
I should say that because that's what I do now. But
Tony Alessandra, DISC 24/7.
Yep.
That's where they go and do it, yeah? Or with the ActionCOACH. All right, so you know what? My favorite thing from today, I loved it when you said earlier on, there's a difference between doing it and doing it well, listening.
Right.
Karma was a good thing. The extra inch, go the extra inch. Oh, really powerful. But my favorite part of it's been when you started just telling your stories then. I mean, I just feel like I know you even better. What's been your favorite bit of today?
Well, I would say revealing to you something you didn't know about me, which was me being a street fighter when I was young.
Yeah,
and I will tell you, somebody said to me that they feel that more than anything else has shaped my life, because I was so good at street fighting that there was sort of a self-esteem. There was a way I carried myself. Nobody tried to force me to do anything. No peer social pressure as a kid. And I didn't abuse it. I wasn't one who went out looking to fight, but was always willing to do it to help or protect somebody else. whether it's friends, whether it was my younger brother got me in more fights than you can imagine. But again, if somebody was being picked on, there I was to help them.
Yeah, well, you could have been the UFC champion of that era.
Who knows?
Well, there you have it. Thank you very much, Dr. Tony Alessandra.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.